Hello Reds, welcome along to All for United. Hello and welcome along to another special show here on All for United. If you've not already, smash that subscribe button to the channel and make sure you hit like on this video. And there's a couple of reasons why you need to hit like. Number one, look at this panel. Roy Cavanagh, Carl Abbott, Dave from Legends Publishing. It's going to be an awesome show with so many stories told and insights that you would not have heard before anywhere, especially when it comes to shows like this on said fan channels. So stick with us, lend us your ears, lend us your eyes. Tell the missus Coronation Street's not important tonight. I'm streaming this on family. And let's get going. Grab a beer and we'll have a good old chit-chat about Manchester United in the 70s over the next hour. And of course, another reason why you need to hit like is because today we are supporting what is going to be an iconic book that is about to be published on Manchester United in the 70s, the big Manchester United book of the 70s, written by authors, historians who are on with us right now, Roy Cavanagh and Carl Abbott, published, of course, by Legends Publishing, Dave, who's with us today as well. So, Dave, I think before we start, I want to come to Roy and Carl and talk to them a little bit about doing the book and how they got involved with it. But from you first, Dave, tell us a little bit about what people can expect from the book if they want to jump online and pre-order now.
Well, it's a real celebration of everything to do with the whole decade. A lot of United fans may think, oh, you know, it probably isn't the most successful decade in the club's history. But I've done the books on the big Brentford book of the 70s. I'm a Brentford fan, and I've done the big Aston Villa book of the 70s and the big Arsenal book of the 70s, which is in gestation. And we start with that decade because it was a time when a lot of fans fell in love with the game and fell in love with their club. And the United decade, the 70s, was one of real turmoil, really, in terms of, you know, your history, getting relegated, consolidating again, coming back up to the top flight, seeing the end of one era of iconic players and seeing a new era kind of form. And then obviously the 80s was an incredible time. So in terms of picking a decade, in our eyes, the 70s was the one to start with because there was almost like the most to talk about. And I know that there's always a kind of tendency to pick just the glory, just the wins. But I think, you know, Roy and Carl speak in a minute, I'm sure. And one of the conversations we had was, although the trip down to the second tier wasn't exactly the most pride-filled moment in United's history, for a lot of fans, they had the most fun they've ever had in their lives. So, you know, it was a brilliant starting point. We will do the other decades, hopefully. We've talked about those. But as I said, the 70s one is a real celebration. And we've unearthed probably 120 pictures, colour photographs that wouldn't have been seen either at all or certainly not since the 70s, as well as some just incredible fan photographs, colour pictures that were taken on the terraces around the country in the mid-70s. So people didn't take cameras then. There was no phones. There was no selfies. But Carl had these brilliant pictures in his family archive, and his pictures are in other away trips at Newcastle and you know, at Hillsborough, Tottenham. And they really, even for a non-United fan like myself, I'm in love with people sharing that incredible passion for their club, and it really put the hairs on my arms on end. And I am honestly very excited about United fans picking this book up. 420 pages. It's a big coffee table book. The photographs, it's the landscape. So all these beautiful landscape photographs. I haven't put word and captions all over the top of them. You open the book and then there'll be like a whole page photograph. Sometimes it goes over a spread, and there's just incredible colour pictures, which I've not I've not let the design of the book ruin. So people can literally open it, and there's a report, match report on every single game. There's an incredible wealth of memorabilia, program covers, just lots of odds and bits and bobs that will really take people back. So yeah, it's just a huge jigsaw puzzle of Man United brilliance, and I'm so proud of my part in it, and I'm sure Roy and Carl are equally pleased with how it's coming about.
And the link's in our description if you do want to pre-order the big Manchester United book of the 70s. As David said there, it is a big book, and do not say we didn't warn you. It's in the title of the book itself. Roy, I tend to think that I know you quite well by now, so much so that when we meet up, I'm expecting a beer. But I think also knowing you and how much you love the football club and you love your history as a historian of this great team, this great club, I expect it's the raw authenticity of this book and what's going into it that really attracted you to the project. But feel free to put it in your own words. What made you want to get involved with this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had the real honour and pleasure of writing about United now for 40 years. And there are publishers and publishers, and you can write about stuff and the publishers want you to be patient, or let's leave it for a couple of years and all that sort of thing. So much so that over the last four years or so, Carl and I, who already knew each other, and hopefully he'll agree, we've got that rapport that what I can do quite well isn't what he can do quite well, and it marries, and we're good friends. So we've done 4 or 5 books in the last 4 or 5 years. We did a book on the 60s, United in the 60s, which was also had a social element to it. Johnny Carey, one of United's true legends, who would still get into my all-time United team now and possibly would captain it. We also wanted to write about the journalists, the 8 great journalists that got killed at Munich, besides the great Busby Babes. So we did a book the day 2 teams died, and we've just finished one on Harold Hardman, who's one of the 3 great United chairmen. And then I got a phone call from another Abbott. It's no relation to Carl, a guy called Colin Abbott, who's a tremendous chap, an historian for the Villa, Aston Villa. And he rang me up, said he'd done a couple of books with Dave, and he wanted someone to do the book on the 70s for United. Was he interested? So before I did anything, I got in touch with Carl and see what who wanted to do it or not. Colin Abbott, who did the Villa book, said it took him 4 years, and I thought, blimey, I'm getting old, 74 in a couple of weeks' time. I'm getting on a bit. I don't want to wait 4 years. So it's a big project. But what's made it much, much easier is that Dave Lane, who runs Legends Publishing, and he urged people to look anyhow at the quality of stuff that he does. He's just a great guy to get on with, and any issue Carl and I have had, he's answered immediately and helped out. And again, it's become a great trio, hopefully. Proof of the pudding will be in the book. But I can assure you, as Dave said, there's some really evocative coloured pictures, and some which Carl will explain in a while, I'm sure, that he brought from his family album. And it was a fantastic decade to write about. It really was probably the least successful, certainly since the Second World War, but a tremendous decade for those who can remember it.
Yeah, Cole, let me ask you, welcome to the channel, by the way. Fantastic to have you on. Roy always waxes lyrical about you on shows and has spoken to us as well about the Hal Harman book as well that you've got coming out soon. But on this book in particular, sounds like that personal connection you've got with it, sharing your family pictures as well within the book. This must mean a great deal to you, this book.
Absolutely. I mean, the 70s was when I fell in love with United. My first game was my 8th birthday, the 2nd of January 1971, a 0-0 draw at home to Middlesbrough. So that was my start of my Manchester United supporting career, I guess. And anyone who was going in that time will tell you, as a schoolboy, come Saturday, you lived for that day in that decade. And so I'm lucky enough to be semi-retired these days, and so I only do things if I enjoy it and if I'm interested in it. And I'm interested in United in the 70s, put it that way. And it doesn't feel like work. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to work on it, and it's a pleasure to tell other people about it, and it's a pleasure to work with Roy and Dave on it.
Just quickly, Carl, on some of those pictures, can you give us maybe a little insight into a couple of them, where they were taken, when they were taken? Obviously, don't give too much away.
Yeah. Well, there's no problem, I don't think, with that. I mean, the pictures are my dad's pictures, and maybe it's part of looking back to the decade, looking back to the 70s. My dad was a teacher. He's a United fanatic. His dad was a United fanatic. And my dad took me and my three brothers home and away watching United from 1975 onwards. And just that, in fact, is remarkable, actually, if you think about it. Think about somebody trying to do that now with the prices. It was a bit remarkable at the times, considering what was going on at the matches as well, having said that. But I was lucky enough, my dad took a camera to a lot of the games, and as Dave said at the beginning, it's unusual for people to take cameras in those days. You couldn't just take snaps on your phone and the like. And so there's pictures from everywhere, really, from 75 onwards. Actually, there's pictures from 75 to 1997, actually, that my dad has. But some of my favourites, you can see me on at a service station with a coach load of United fans on our way down to the disappointment of the Southampton Cup final. You can see me queuing outside Wembley, 77. You can see me at Newcastle, see the games there. Just so many games, and every picture, of course, brings back the memories. And you know, in terms of telling a social history like we did in the 60s, we don't really do that in words in the 70s book. We write reports on every game, we write on every player, but the pictures tell the story of that decade in a way that you couldn't possibly do. And so we're lucky that we've got pictures from my dad's photos, certain of them, and a brilliant collection of pictures from professional archives, together with some fantastic memorabilia, really. And it paints social history in a way you couldn't do with words, I think.
How does it feel, just quickly, Carl, seeing them in colour? How does it feel seeing them, some of the pictures, you know, in a completely different way that you've ever seen them before?
Well, it was incredible, actually, because most of the pictures were with one of my brothers, and they'd been under the bed kind of thing, you know. And I asked if he I knew these were around. I'd not looked at them for years, and I asked if he had them. He was moving house, actually. He was being evicted. That's my younger brother for you. But anyway, hey, John. And his rent was up, basically. But anyway, so in moving, he gave me a lot of the memorabilia and the like to look at. And honestly, it was amazing to go through it. It was blew my mind, actually. I didn't realise the extent of it. And they're all jumbled up, so I've had to piece things together and work out which game is which. And I've put things on Twitter, and a lot of people's memories are a lot better than mine on Twitter, put it that way. I'm in the photos and I can't remember the game at times. But fantastic resource, and it's great to make something of it. Really is great to make something of it.
Brilliant. We're going to come to Roy and Carl and talk about some of the games, some of the players, and some of the standout moments in the 70s. Hit a like on this video, share it far and wide. If you want to shout out, get in the live chat as well. And if you're watching anywhere else but on YouTube, come over to youtube.com/AllForUnited. Dave, let me come over to you. A big thing in football nowadays are statistics. Everyone looks at statistics. Everyone looks at match reports. This book is full of statistics, full of match reports. So how have you managed to find a way for the book to, so to speak, appeal now to a generation that's very led by stats? I mean, back in the day, I don't think statistics were a bigger thing as they were now. So how have you managed to find that way? And also on the similar topic, obviously we're talking about the 70s being quite a different period for Manchester United. It wasn't the glory days. So how have you still managed to, so to speak, reflect, even rawly, in maybe a positive light and so to speak, a less negative light in terms of what the times were like?
So with statistics, you know, yes, there are stats in the book, and there's quite a few, but with not not to the extent where there's too many. And I think there's a lot of books out there that are just kind of like spreadsheets, and this isn't one of those books at all. There's, there are league tables, and there are, there's a graph of where the team has progressed during the course of every season. There's bits and bobs like, the average league attendance, the highest league attendance, and there's a program cover of every season, and there's appearances at the back. But it's not like another one of those spreadsheet books. This is very visual. It is very designed, but not overly designed, as I'm keen to express. There's lots of stories, and there's lots of nuggets in there that you'll discover. It's not predictable, I don't think, and that's, as a publisher, I really try and avoid regurgitating stuff that's already happened. And I know a lot's been written about Man United in the 70s, and some would say there's nothing that hasn't been written, but I don't think there's been anything that's been presented like this before. And as I said, the format works. It's a wide format. It's not another portrait book with cropped pictures. The photographs are kind of allowed to be amazing, and the reports and the wording that accompanies it, they really do complement one another. So yeah, there's a lot of information, I'd say, rather than a lot of stats. And or equally, another reason for picking the 70s is this, the term that's become kind of very, very contentious is this legacy fan. There's anyone that considered or has been classed a legacy fan will really get this book, I think. And I think that anyone of a certain age that doesn't really remember the 70s, they might started going to Old Trafford early 90s all the way through the noughties. They'll get a lot out of this. They'll realise why the DNA is so strong through the club. Why there's a lot of fans that really weren't happy about the recent Super League talk. Some were, obviously. Some get off on just this grandiose we are, but it's the fans that went through the 70s and the 80s. In the less successful times, they understand why this breakaway talk was so so cancerous, really. So there's a lot of what makes real football fans tick kind of wrapped up in this book, and what will come after this. It kind of will make sense because of what happened in the 70s. And I know, the Munich disaster and the reconstruction of the club through the 60s, and then winning the European Cup in the late 60s, they were defining moments. Mm-hmm. And I thought what happened in the 70s was it made what happened later that much more special, because there was no guarantee that you were going to get out the first time of the second division. And the fact that you did, and then you went straight on to win the FA Cup, and then contest other FA Cups, and then become runners up. It set things up for what happened, and I think this is why the 70s, and this book in particular, I think is so special. And equally, at the moment, there's a chance for people that pre-order the book to get their name in it, and that was something that we wanted to do as well, because there's a lot of fans. There's lots of fathers and mothers and granddads and uncles and aunts of fans that are still going today who aren't there anymore, and it allows people to get their name in the book, and also the people that introduced them to the club, the people that took them on and stood on the terraces for the first time, the ones that bought them their first scarf, their rosettes, the ones that made United so special to them. So if you buy it, you pre-order the book, obviously we're pushing people to buy the book, obviously that's what we're here for, but there's a big plus tick that. So I just hope people take that opportunity, because it's brilliant when you get your book and your name's in it. That makes it even more special.
Who's just released a kit and it's got the names, their away kit, and it's got the names of all the season ticket holders that continues to pay their season ticket. It's down in League One or League Two. I can't remember who's just done it, but someone's just done the same. I agree. It's a really nice touch, and it's a really nice way for fans to get something that is theirs, that has their name on, that's also associated with their club. Yeah, absolutely spot on, Dave. I want to now take a little move through the years, and I don't want to spend too long on that, but I want to try and get a brief picture for those out there who don't know what the 70s looked like for Manchester United. So, Roy, I'm going to start with you. From my research, the 70s started with the moment that no one wanted. I mean, myself, as well, I say no one wanted. I mean, as a fan, you don't think you'd ever see the day when it happens, I suppose, at that point. But as a fan who sort of lived and breathed through Sir Alex Ferguson's reign, the moment that he stepped down, I didn't know where the club was going to go. And I know, you know, towards the end of Sir Matt Busby's time at the club, there must have been a similar atmosphere in the air. I mean, I don't know. I suppose that's what I've got to ask. So Matt stepped down, the 70s starts. What happened?
Well, by the way, on that kit you were talking about the names,
yes,
Kent, I know you're from. You live in Kent, do you?
Yes, yeah.
Well, Kent County Cricket Club have put all the names of people who let the membership go last year when there was no cricket. They've got them screenshot across their the shirt, which is fantastic gesture.
I've not even seen that.
Yeah,
it's only up the road as well, Canterbury, where they play at the cricket ground. Yeah.
Well, I've watched United since '54, so by the time we got to the 1970, I mean, I'd seen the Busby Babes. I'd obviously been through Munich, which I still remember vividly as an 11-year-old boy. But then I saw the rise after in the early parts of the '60s when Dennis Law came and Georgie Best, Bobby Charlton was already there. We had a fantastic side through the '60s. So to suddenly move into the '70s and what happened was a shock. The main situation, of course, was that Sir Matt actually resigned in 1969, which brought a new manager to the club, and that was to be Wilf McGuinness, who I've had the real pleasure and honour of meeting a few times. And I have to tell you that Wilf McGuinness is one of the top blokes. Absolutely fantastic. A really funny guy. And he was a brilliant trainer, coach. He was one of Sir Alf Ramsey's backroom staff in 1966 when they won the World Cup. Because Wilf had tragically broke his leg at the end of the 50s, and where he would have been the man to have tried to have taken over from Duncan Edwards. His career was ended, so he took up coaching. And Wilf was there for about 18 months. And one of the things that Carl and I talked about and spotted, which was quite unbelievable, really, Wilf was the so-called manager, but Sir Matt was still there. So Matt was titled the general manager. So when you open the programme, and normally page 3, unlike the Sun, would have an article by your manager talking about the game and the opposition. In the 18 months that Wilf was manager, it was Sir Matt who wrote that page. And where you have the officials, where it says the president, chairman, secretary, whatever, the manager, it said general manager, Sir Matt Busby, and Wilf's name wasn't in the programme for 18 months. So that gives you a little bit of background that Wilf's hands were, I think, dramatically tied. The only guy he bought in the 18 months was Ian Yore, centre-half, Scotland centre-half, who played for the Arsenal. When Wilf himself told me, and other people he was talking of buying told me about how they were going to, could have possibly signed for United at the time. So that first 18 months of the 70s, Will took United to 3 semi-finals. I mean, I know Ollie's just took us 4 or so. 5 were the one that we won. But Wilf lost all 3. 2 of them very, very unluckily, and one that caused his downfall in the end. And Sir Matt came back and did the 6 months to the end of the season. And then they brought Frank O'Farrell in 1972. I actually remember going to Frank O'Farrell's first match, which was a Watney Cup game at 4th Division Halifax Town, and we had George Best, Bobby Charlton, and Dennis Law in the side. He absolutely chucked it down, and I mean rain. And the ground held 19,000, which was, incredible. You'd think it held about 5,000, but it was 19,000 inside. United got beat 2-1. So that wasn't a great start for Frank O'Farrell, but he did have a great start to the league season. And from August till Christmas, United, in fact, played some of the best football United had played for years. Best was outstanding, but Law was great, Charlton was great, and the team was just gelling. And I think by Christmas, they were about 4 or 5 points clear. And it was 2 points for winning those days, of course. And then the wheels just fell off at the beginning of January 1973. And they went about 7 games and lost the lot and came down the table to 4th. O'Farrell made 2 great signings. His hands were untied a little bit, and he signed Martin Buchan, who will go down as one of United's greatest defenders, and Ian Story Moore, who was a very, very good left winger, but sadly was beset by injury. And United finished 8th in that season. The start of the following season, 72-3, was very, very poor. At one stage, Alex Stepney was the leading goal scorer with 2 penalties. And O'Farrell got bombed away when we got beat 5-0 at Crystal Palace, who actually were bottom at the time. We were about 3rd from the bottom. And they brought Tommy Docherty in. And Tommy struggled at first, but then steadied it. But a lot of Scotsmen, including Lou Macari, who was on your show last week, Ben, such a top guy. And, he steadied United. And at the end of that season, you'd have thought, well, this has got a really good platform. But then 73-4, I mean, the number of times I must have rang Carl and said, I actually saw this, but writing it, I can't believe what I'm writing. When I'm writing about some of the games, it was like, wow, it put your head under the pillow. It was embarrassing. It was unbelievable. I mean, I can carry on if you want to, Decade, or perhaps you want to bring...
let's bring Carl in.
Sorry, can I just mention that Watney's Cup game, the Halifax away? We found just the most beautiful photographs of that match.
Yes.
And Halifax had one of the best kits I've ever seen in my life. They had the number. It was orange, wasn't it? And the number was on their chest. It didn't have a badge. It's almost like a polo. It's almost like an actual horse polo shirt. Yeah. And United played in all white, didn't they? They're stunning photographs. They're stunning pictures.
And it chucked it down.
Let's bring Carl in to continue talking about 73-74, Carl. I think Roy ended his bit really nicely there on I couldn't believe what I was writing.
Well, exactly, and I mean, I think we both started getting depressed actually going through the game, and you think of the extent of the decline that they allowed into that club, really, from 68 to the season that they went down. It was awful, really. It was awful, and it probably took United crashing to rock bottom. I suppose they could have gone further down, but rock bottom as far as United's concerned, the relegation, for it to be able to realise where we were. That's what they say in life. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start to recover, and United hit rock bottom okay, but they recovered. And of course, the relegation season, Roy was there. I went to very few matches until the second division. I'm a glory hunter, effectively, because in those days the only way I could go was if my dad had a season ticket in the seats, and with his sister and his dad. And for me to go, I needed a ticket to be spare to sit next to him, you see, and so I couldn't do it at that time. Maybe I was fortunate. So my experience was after the pain of the relegation, but reading and looking back at it, and I remember my dad in those days how it affected him, and it must have affected everybody really to see a great club in such a situation, and what happens if people don't invest actually. But for me, I was lucky. I came in the second division. I thought it was easy in a way. I saw. That's why my memories are so much brighter, I guess. I saw the rebirth in some ways, a comparative rebirth, of course. It was a long time until we won the league again, and I was there all that time. But it seemed to me at that time there was no other club to be watching in that second division season than United, and our crowds were higher in the second division than any team in the first division. And I can guarantee to you that the excitement and the quality of football in that year and the 2 seasons that followed, there was none better played at that time. Nobody came close, actually, in fact, in terms of the entertaining football that United played in those days. We were a breath of fresh air. People don't quite realise it about that side. They played some fantastic football. They really played some fantastic football at a time when defences and the kind of Leeds, Reeve, this kind of attitude had got in. Liverpool mastering the back pass, etc. And United with 2 wingers really breathed fresh air into the game at that time.
What were the feelings like, Cole? Can I quickly ask you at the time on the, so to speak, dispersing of the Holy Trinity? Because obviously that happened also in the lead up to that moment. Of course, we could potentially hit on the role that he did or didn't play as in Dennis Law, but ultimately, obviously, Bestie went in the January, didn't he? The season before, Charlton retired. How was that handled at the time?
Well, probably Roy's better to speak specifically on that, but I mean, it mirrored the sadness that was happening to the club. Really, Bobby probably left on his own terms. I guess he retired. Yeah. He maybe could have done another year, but I think his heart had gone. Mm. But you know, the way that the Law situation was handled is awful. To be frank, I better leave those things to Roy because he knows every detail. I don't want to say a wrong word about it, but it wasn't the way a legend. Yeah. Should have been treated the way that Dennis Law was treated, and in a day where in a world where legends are everywhere, Dennis Law was a true legend, and it shouldn't have ended for Dennis the way that it ended for Dennis. And of course, George's decline, which I think in part that there's lots of reasons. People know a lot better than me about the reasons behind George's decline, etc. But you know, I don't think the way that the club was being looked after at that time helped him. Everything was on his shoulders in many ways, and after 68, he said this to Roy. I know we've got the notes of the interviews, etc. Really, that should have been his prime, and the club should have kicked on from that and built on it. And instead, the club declined, and sadly, to a degree, George did with it. I don't know if you want to add something on that, Roy. Actually, probably for the best, really.
Yeah, well, actually, Carl's articulated it very well. He's obviously read the book, and the stories are all in the book. But I mean, Bobby retired gracefully. He could have played another year, but he retired the season before the relegation. Dennis was let go disgracefully. I mean, it really is as bad as that. George went on one of his walkabouts, and people forget Tony Dunn, who I tell you was one of the great fullbacks. Tony Dunn. He actually was given a free transfer to Bolton Wanderers, and Tony Dunn played another 5 seasons. Tommy Dock actually compounded that issue by then moving Martin Buchan, who was a truly great number 6, into the left back position. So when you're writing this and you're looking at what's happening at the team, and young Jerry Daly was making his debut, Sammy McElroy was still very young, Brian Greenoff was still very young. Alex Stepney was taking the penalties, and no wonder we were getting beat. So we got to the Christmas, and about the March, we signed Jim McCalliog, who's a top bloke and a fine player. He's moved about quite a lot, but Jim McCalliog came in the March, and United had a really good run from March to the end of the season, up till about that City game. And if they perhaps had signed McCalliog, say, a month before, they might have avoided relegation. But in a bizarre way, as Carl articulated before, you don't like saying it because they got out of it, so everything was all right. But the relegation in the end, closed a massive chapter that might have festered and festered and festered. And they might have struggled around 15, 16 for 3 or 4 seasons or whatever. Whereas that bang, whang, bang, wallop, he had to do something. And the man to do it, of course, was Tommy Docherty. And boy, did he do it. And I can assure you, and I mean, there'll be lots of people now who are in the 50s, like Carl would say, started watching them at the age of 10, things like that, in the mid-70s, in the second division season. Some of the games were absolutely amazing. Sunderland at home, top of the table game in November, 60,000, and a game to remember. And you went to away matches. I mean, I remember going to Blackpool in October, and it absolutely chucked it down. And it's 30,000 in Blackpool, and I bet 20,000 easily were United fans. And the fans were, all the away games, and there was some trouble and aggravation, and Carl went to Notts County right at the end. Well, Carl, just tell them what Notts County's ground was like, and the aggravation and the abuse United got on that.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Carl started most of it.
You look like the Bay City Rollers.
I was worried the same there. I thought I was going to be in trouble. But yeah, I was at Notts County, and there's a lot of aspects of the 70s actually represented in that game at Notts County, because that was the game where we knew we were going up and we were going to be champions. So it was a day of celebration for United, the Notts County away game. To be frank, I don't think the United fans, especially if you looked at it through today's lens, did themselves proud. There was a lot of trouble that day. But also, what people forget, and United fans were blamed for this, and just consider this. United fans were blamed for pushing a crush barrier over, and blamed for pushing a toilet wall over. That was all over the papers. You can look at them now. Now, you tell me that you should be able to push a crush barrier over. That's what crush barriers are for stopping crowd surges. And you tell me that you can be blamed for pushing a toilet wall over. But as football fans in those days, you weren't really considered that you had rights, that you were entitled to be in a stadium that was safe. And that attitude lived on for a long time after that. So, yeah, nobody would claim United fans were angels in those days. I wouldn't make that case, but grounds were crumbling, and to blame the crowd, to blame fans for a crush barrier falling over. If you think about that in today's world, that tells you something about the opinion that most people had of football fans actually, and what it was like to go to matches in some ways, and even as a football fan, I think you almost felt guilty yourself for doing that. It never occurred to you that you were entitled to go to a match in a safe stadium. Almost, it was just that's how it was. That's how it was. So
an adrenaline rush going to watch football, by the sounds of it.
I find this with a lot of projects of this era. It's kind of difficult to know how to kind of circumnavigate the hooliganism and the kind of raw passions that were on the terraces. It was rife throughout football. It wasn't just United. It was everywhere in the game. We've mentioned it. We don't glorify it. There's a brilliant picture away at Loftus Road where there's a Man United fan that's got a white mask on. It's part of that Chelsea headhunters kind of thing where people kind of disguise what they look like. Obviously Saint-Étienne was another night in one of your European games where there was crowd issues. They're mentioned, but we're not sort of glorifying it. It's all in perspective to what it was, because it was just rife throughout football.
So what was the atmosphere? Sorry, Cole, just quickly, what was the atmosphere like in the stands then when we so to speak went down? What was was it a case of in those days that I'd be sat there with my heads in my hands and I'd be absolutely gutted, or is it then turning to violence or protest? Or we're seeing what's happening now. How did fans used to react back in the day when they so to speak didn't like something?
Well, in the relegation season, again late February. They played Leeds, who were top of the table and undefeated for about 30 games. And we were bottom after that game. And the crowd was 60,000. And I can assure you that wasn't made up with a great number of Leeds fans. And this was like, bottom of the table. And they were going to go down. So there was no anti-Glazer stuff like you've got today. It was more in those days still a carryover in a way from the 50s and 60s, where they happened to be your team. Now, in Dave's case, Brentford's his side. In mine and Carl's, it's United, but they're your team, and you win, fine. You lose, not so good. You draw, could we have won? One thing that did come as well from the second division season was a number of real legend heroes, and we've talked about Lou before, but Stepney was a follow over from the '68 Cup final. He was still there. Young Galveston, Stuart Houston, who they actually bought from Brentford on New Year's Day at '73. Young Jerry Daly. I mean, a young 18-year-old lad from Southern Ireland. He became a hero. And of course, at centre half was big 6'2", allegedly eyes of blue, Jim Holton, who was this like man mountain who literally would walk through those walls that Carl was just talking about. I actually was at Hillsborough the day he broke his leg, which effectively ended his career. But we'd also got these two fantastic wingers, Steve Coppell and Gordon Hill, Macari, Stuart Pearson we'd bought a year too late. We bought him when we went into the second division, but he scored goals. And of course, leading it all was Martin Buchan at number 6, who I'd like to just bring in at this point, Ben, if it's okay. Martin Buchan has actually written the foreword for this book. And I can't remember now how many words, 3,000, perhaps a bit more. But they're all his words. They're not my words or Carl's words or Dave's asked him to do this. And I said to Martin, have you never thought of writing a book yourself? Because he's had a great career. He was the first, I don't know if he's still the only man to captain a Scottish and English team to the FA Cup victory. He played for Scotland in a couple of World Cups. Was at United when they went down. Was there as a captain as they came back up. And a man who's very, very, very much his own man. And he said, no, there's no way I'm going to write a book. These words are the closest anyone will see to a book by Martin Buchan. And he's done the foreword for the book, which all of us are very, very grateful for.
Yeah, I'll sort it on the publishing page as well. Again, the link's in the description if you want to go and check that out and do that. Sorry, Dave, was you going to say something?
Yeah,
Sorry, Carl. You go, Carl.
Yeah, if I can, just follow up on a couple of things. Firstly, Martin Buchan. I mean, just a quality player, just an absolute class player. Not sure I've seen as good a centre half as Martin at United in all my time. And if we're honest, the quality of football's probably improved since those days. But Buchan was a class act. I just want to go back, if there's time, to the fans and the way, the way that they felt about going down. And I think it's an important point in a couple of cases. One, about the hooliganism. People need to realise and understand, actually, there was 10,000, 20,000 teenagers, really, early 20s, people travelling around the country. And in some respects, it's sad that can't happen now. The demographic of people at football is a lot older. To get tickets is a lot harder. You can't just decide on a Friday night, I'm going to go to the match on Saturday. So with all the problems that there were in those days, there's some things that it's sad that have gone. And the other thing I think that's sad that has gone, the way that people did react to going down, was with a spirit of defiance in many ways, because we were fans of the club. And there was not really a difference. We were all part of the same club. The fans, supporters, players, etc., all felt part of the same thing. So you would hear in those days, and for a long time after, we'll support you evermore. And people sang it proudly, and that's what they did. And they did that through the second division. And Roy mentioned the Blackpool game. That was my first away game, Blackpool. So I remember it vividly. I couldn't believe it, actually, as an 11-year-old going to that game. The scenes. I'm with a brother who's 8, brothers at 14 and 16, I think, in that day. And I remember a song that I heard a few times in those days. People would sing, "We shall overcome." That's what they sang, and there was that kind of spirit of defiance. And to come back that year, really felt a vindication of sticking with the club and supporting the club through thick and thin. And you know, you all felt part of one great big Red Army, I suppose, for want of a better word. You were part of something there. There was no dissent between fans and the like in those days at all. So I just wanted to make that point before we moved on, actually.
Yeah, no, good points, well made. I think that's the reason why I wanted to hit on it as well, because I think ultimately, you know, fans are fans and they all want the same thing, and that is the best for their club, no matter how they express themselves. I think the way you've articulated that, Carl, was actually bang on the money. So thank you for that. I just want to hit on. So we speak about the glory days. Just again, a couple more moments. Roy, was you at the 77 Cup final?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Tell us about the day.
I was at the 76 Cup final as well. When
the 76 Cup final, of course.
Yeah, I remember going to the 5th round tie at Leicester, and we beat a very good Leicester team at Leicester. Worthington was playing for them. We beat them 2-1, and I noticed United was still 8-1 to win the cup, and I put a fiver on them to win the cup after the 5th round. You know, that's 40-45 quid with your money back. Got to the final, playing a second division side, Southampton, who were actually a very experienced team. Shannon, Osgood, people like that were in their side. And of course, Southampton were about 6 or 7-1 on the day, only 2 teams in it. And of course, I should have laid my money off, but no, I mean, we couldn't get beat. So that was another bad moment coming back. But the year after, we'd started the season a bit ropey. We signed Jimmy Green off around the November, and he fitted perfectly into the side alongside Pearson. We had a great cup run, beat Leeds in the semi-final, and got through to play Liverpool, who were actually on the cusp of a treble because they'd won the league. They were playing us on the Saturday in the FA Cup, and on the following Wednesday they were playing Mönchengladbach in Rome for the European Cup. And it was a really good game. Cup finals can be boring, negative, whatever, but this was a really good game, and you know, we deserved to win 2-1, and that was a fantastic feeling. And you know, you just knew that United actually were back. Of course, 6 weeks after, the manager, Thomas Henderson Doherty, suddenly got sacked, so that, you know, that brought some worries into your mind. But you know, we kept going.
Of course, Carl, were you at the cup final or any of the cup finals? Didn't we also the year after go on to play Arsenal? Was it in another final that we lost as well?
That was 79. Yeah, 3 and 4 years.
But they were mid-season finish, mid-table finishes as well, weren't they, in the league? But still managed to get a run to the cup finals. Yeah,
I was at all the cup finals. 76, by the way, we were in with a realistic shout of the double.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really were. QPR came second, I think, in the end. But you know, right up until people forget, but right up to till near the end of the season, we were in a very good chance of winning that league. Actually, I never thought it would happen. I never thought I'd see United win the league, to be honest. But we were close in 76, 77. As Roy said, we started badly. I think Booker may have been injured. Roy
yes, it was.
Said better. It made a big difference to the club at that time. But we came back. And then, of course, it was Sexton after that, and a bit of a more dour style of football and a bit of a rebuild. But he came close as well, 79-80, right to the last game of the season. Was it that year?
Yeah. 2 points. We lost the title by 2 points. And the year before, of course, he'd got beat in dramatic injury time. So I mean, Sexton has gone down as a door manager, boring manager, whatever. But you know, here by the grace of God and a bit of luck, which everybody needs in every walk of life, he could easily beat Arsenal in that cup final, and they could actually have won that league. They were 2 points off. But as Carl said, it was incredible. Never at any time did you think they were actually going to win it. But they were only 2 points off at the end of the season.
I feel like we've walked through the decade now. Obviously, there's loads more we could hit on. I want to come and talk about favourite games and favourite players in the second, Roy and Cole. But before I do that, Dave, being a part of this journey with the book and hearing from people like Roy and Carl, when you started out on this journey, was there a particular maybe time? I don't know, a year, a season, a player, a game, or something that a manager that you wanted to learn a bit more about, and how did that sort of weigh up, so to speak, in your expectations?
To be honest with you, I'm sat here just pinching myself because, you know, I watched these cup finals as a kid, and, you know, cup final day was just incredible. It was one of the highlights of the season. You know, we can talk about, you know, the cup being, you know, diluted. It's not being as, you know, it's not what it was, but it was the be all and end all at the time. And I sat there and I watched all three cup finals. In fact, I didn't watch the 76 cup final. I think I was a bit too young for that. And I don't remember the Southampton defeat. I remember the others. I you know, like names to me, you know, like collecting stickers as a kid, you know, I had Lou Macari, and I had you know, McQueen, and I had McElroy, and I had all these players in Greenough, and they're just names to me that they were big names, and now I'm publishing books, and there's like there's these incredible photographs, and I'm speaking and doing the production with fans, and you can tell. I mean, to me, I you know, just like the guy said earlier, that they only do things that they're interested in doing now, and I will only produce a book that's got a real heart and soul. And to me, this book is probably one of the pinnacles of anything I'll produce. I'm very proud of producing the Griffin Park book, which, you know, which celebrates the club. And I'm incredibly proud of the first part of Aston Villa's 150 years. You know, this is the size of the book that will be out. But Man United in the 70s was just part of my growing up, and, you know, to have, I'm looking at pictures on screen of George Best, Charlton, you know, and I'm going through this, you know, Houston, who I you know, I remember from Brentford, and then, you know, coming through the sort of the down times, but these guys, the stories of them going home and away in the second division, and how it was almost like a reset moment for the club, and then seeing the way they came back. And one of the final pictures in the book is of Ray Wilkins, who went on, he signed in the very last season in the 70s, but then he was like a stalwart through the 80s. So it's like a baton changing moment through the decades, where what had happened before was then passed on to what happened in the future. So for me, yeah, I'm sat here listening to these guys and pinching myself that I'm part of this project, and you know, I'm very proud of it.
Can I just quickly ask, before we go on to games and players, just interested to know, a certain someone started out in his managerial career in the 70s and went on obviously to be manager of Manchester United, a certain Sir Alex Ferguson. Did anyone ever hear the name Sir Alex Ferguson during the 70s as he started out in Aberdeen? Was anything ever mentioned, or was he still very much no? Cole's shaking his head. Dave, Roy, did you ever?
I definitely knew about Alex Ferguson, because Aberdeen were a very, very good side, and you know, he brought them. He was bringing them through to win the Scottish League. But as to him becoming a manager at Manchester United, no, it was just having. I mean, don't forget, I was 79. I'd be 30 odd. You know, I wouldn't say I was worldly wide, but I certainly took an interest in all football, so I knew of him about what was happening in Scotland, but not really. I mean, the man who was mooted quite a lot as being a United manager was another Scotsman, was Jock Stein, and it depends who you believe, but the authority I was told, you know, he certainly met United a couple of times to take over from Busby before McGuinness. And I think there was another time, perhaps just after. But evidently, one of the stories was that his wife, in the end, didn't want to leave Glasgow. But he was certainly a manager that would have, you know, on paper would have had the stature to replace Busby. But I mean, fancy replacing him. I mean, I may have mentioned on here before, but I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again. But Will, top man, he says to me, he said, the job was just too big for me. He said, it was like marrying Dolly Parton. He said, you know, what's a man supposed to do? It's just too big. And you know, that was Will's attitude. And but yeah, I knew Ferguson.
Oh, lost you slightly there, Roy. Oh, hopefully you'll be back in a second. I slightly lost you.
That's the first.
To have cut him out.
Yeah, that is. I feel like I'm having my Adele moment. We've got to move on. Corden had at the Brits a few years ago. Look, let's move on. Carl, I'm going to come over to you quickly. I just wanted to hear from you and Roy, and we'll get Roy back in a second. The standout game for you in the 70s, is there a game in the 70s that will stick with you for forever?
There's a lot to pick a single one. I'll pick two if I can. The semi-finals at Hillsborough, 76 and 77, against Derby and Leeds United. Just everything about those days. The amount of fans travelling over. I can't remember whether it's Snake Pass or Woodhead from Manchester to Sheffield. Just a line of United fans going, and 3/4 of the ground both times full of United fans. We'd get tickets from Derby or from Leeds, and the support was unbelievable. I maybe I'm romantic in a way, but I didn't believe United could lose when we had that support behind us in those days. I didn't think it was possible, actually. And our record in semi-finals at that period and for a long time afterwards was unbelievable, actually. And I do firmly believe that the fans carried the team through. And so those semi-finals will stick in my mind forever. The Derby and Leeds semi-finals, just fantastic days out, fantastic performances. Against Derby, Derby were the favourites, by the way. Hard to imagine now, but they'd not long ago won the league, etc. in those days, and we'd just come up from the second division. But just fantastic days, fantastic football, and I remember sleeping the night before Derby with my scarf on. I was that excited that I was going to the semi-final in the morning. Really fantastic. Yeah.
Can we give them their proper name? Wayne Rooney's Derby.
Hey boys.
Yeah, Wayne Rooney's Derby. Yeah. Welcome back, Roy.
Yeah, I hope BT are listening. This Halo system's not the greatest.
Don't say that. This show's sponsored by BT.
Oh.
Carl was just telling us there 2 games that he'll never forget from the 70s. So do you want to go with 2 as well, Roy? Two games that will always stand out for you.
Which were the 2 Carl mentioned?
We'll see which ones you say first.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to tell you 2 I remember that I saw. And the only time in 65 years of watching United that I got locked out was in the 1971-2 season when they played Sheffield United. And there's a very famous goal of George Best, which is repeated timelessly on BBC, where he runs across the field and then puts the ball into the far corner. But I got locked out that day, and I was still in the car park outside. But the 2 games that I really vividly remember in that was the 76 semi-final against Derby County, and I mean we lost the final, but that day United were back, no doubt, and we lost the final. But that was an amazing occasion. Amazing performance and a brilliant victory. And the other one was being at Everton in 79 in the semi-final against Liverpool, and when Jimmy Greenough scored a goal late on and we beat Liverpool 1-0 to get us into the 79 final. So interestingly, 2 of the memorable games, one is memorable semi-finals, but we lost the 2 finals, which
well, you 2 honestly do know each other quite well. We should do a Mr. and Mrs. with you 2. I bet you get maximum points.
That was the same 2 games.
They were, yeah. No, the second one wasn't.
77,
yeah.
77, right. 76 and 77 for me.
All right, yeah.
So it's the final one that was different, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about a player that we all know best? Law and Charlton played a part in the 70s. But for you, Roy, who would you class as United's player of the decade for the 70s?
It would be Martin Buchan. There's some very honourable mentions, but even though it was 1972 when he arrived to play. It would have to be Martin Buchan for me. I think McIlroy deserves a very honourable mention. He doesn't get elevated into the status he was, but he was a true United player and a great player. But Martin Buchan, without a shadow of a doubt.
Carl, are you going to deviate away from that, or do you want to add any more to it?
I'm gonna say slightly different. I'll pick two again, but it's a pair. Roy's right about Martin Buchan. I don't think anyone argued, but as a pair, Hill and Coppell, for what they symbolised.
Yes.
As a pair of attacking wingers, that to me symbolised the second half of that decade when United were flying, and two fantastic players actually. Steve Coppell, just an all-round fantastic, solid player, and God Mill, in for the 2 or 3 years that he was really on song for United, was a fantastic winger for us with a brilliant goal-scoring record. But no other teams had wingers like we had, and that was the difference. Actually, the excitement those two brought.
Can I have Paddy Roach? Because
yeah,
he was the only player that we ever signed from Man United, and well, it was when I was growing up, and we were so excited until.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a few you can have now if you want them, Dave.
Yeah, well,
one or two.
Honestly,
I'm sure our DLFs are having words at the moment.
Yeah, give Woodward anything in here, bite your hand off. I tell you, for some of them, you can have Phil Jones on a free. Anyway, let's move on. Shall we?
No.
Oh, you just go.
Guys, thank you so much. That has been an incredible hour, and we might even have to do it again around the time that the book's launched and dive it even more deeper into the 70s, because I just love these shows. You learn so much more by listening to people like yourself, Roy, and like yourself, Carl, and Dave. Just a fantastic thing that you're doing here. I mean, publishing this book, but also the way you're putting a story together. I think by the sounds of it, easy to digest. It sounds raw. It sounds authentic. It's got stuff that people may never have seen before. It's just got everything that you want a proper Manchester United book to have, that looks at a time in our history that obviously relates to so much that goes with the club now. And obviously we've got that forever statue outside Old Trafford of the Holy Trinity. And I think ultimately, of course, they did play a part in the 70s. And that's why the 70s will also, be ingrained in this club's history forever. So nice work, Dave. Final words from you. When is the book out? Obviously, people can pre-order now. The link's in the bio. But any final statements from you on the book?
Yeah, it'll be out in September. It's pretty much finished. We just need to do a final proofread, just make sure nothing unexpected happens. It will be quite nice when the fixtures come out, and hopefully the easing will allow proper fans to go back to the games again, and we can have a proper book launch. So things like that. We're just waiting for the ability to kind of celebrate it properly. So anyone that pre-orders it now, legendspublishing.net/United, can get their name in the book. That will be going on for at least another 2 months, and then so we'll update you all through this website. And thanks for the support, and I hope you enjoyed listening to some of the stories. I'm still vibing on it. So I can't wait for the book to come out, and I'm part of it.
And anytime, and also anything for this man on my. Oh my God, it's like mirrored image. I don't know how to go here. To this man over here, there he is, Roy Cavanagh. Just absolute joy to spend time in your company, mate. And Carl, fantastic to meet you. Dave, fantastic to meet you as well. That is the United, just a snapshot of our club in the 70s. There's a much bigger story to tell that you can read in the book, the big Manchester United book of the 70s. Let's do another show around the time of the launch as well to bring you some other content that hasn't been heard of, and to really reflect and emphasise on some of the times that we've spoken about briefly today. Once again, thanks to my panel, Roy Cavanagh, Carl Abbott, Dave from Legends Publishing. We're going to get out of here. We'll do a show on Wednesday, and we've got a few shows lined up over the summer as well on United's history. So for now, if you want to go back, listen to some shows about George Best, the Busby Babes, please do check out the homepage on the channel to hear those. For now, I'm going to get out of here. Stay safe, everyone. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.